Hello everybody and welcome back to Pokemon Emerald. This week I will be playing through the game with only a Huntail. This one is a bit of a weird Pokemon. I don't think that many people used it because it's kinda hard to get in a regular game, and to be honest I don't think it's really worth the effort. Like many other Pokémons, Huntail suffers from the lack of a physical special split. It's a water-type physical attacker, but the only physical attacking moves he can learn are normal one from TMs, so not great. Anyway, the rules of this run are I can only use my starter in combat, I can't use consumables in battle, I can't raise my evasion in any way, and I can't use cheats or glitches. Huntail does not start the game very well. He only knows Whirlpool at the start, and oh boy, this move is hot garbage. Bad accuracy, awful damage, makes for a very unreliable combo. I tried to use it against May and got defeated. Yep, that checks out. So time for plan B. After using all the PPs against wild Pokémons, I struggled against her and it was way more effective. By the time I reached the grunt in the forest, I learned Bite, which is still not a great move because it is special and resisted by Pucciena, but at least it's a reliable move and was enough to defeat the Team Aqua guy and grant me passage to the first gym. Like Milotic, the growth rate is very weird, and because of that I end up being quite underleveled for this fight. Maybe using the water move against Geodude was fine, since it is doubly weak to it, and it could have one-shotted, but I prefer to get through them in a reliable way. In the end, I used Whirlpool one last time against her ace, just for the cheap damage at the end of the turn, but I am not sure it was worth it. Unfortunately, it only lasts a few turns, so overall the damage was not that high. I finished off Nosepass with a couple more bites and earned the first gym badge. Next is the rematch against May, and I was very worried about this one. Her starter now knows Absorb, and sure it only has 20 power, but it is super effective and heals her. Bite is enough to remove Trico from the equation before it gets too problematic, so that's a relief. Of course, I skipped Brawly with only Bite as my attacking move and made my way to this late port, where first I took on the two Team Aqua grunts. The fight against them was not great. Bite is resisted and makes contact, so it was painful to deal with the Corvanas, but no resets here either. After defeating them and leveling some more, I finally reached level 22 when I learned Water Pulse. Again, it's a special move, but it's good and it's a stab, so I went back to Brawly and blasted him. I was a bit surprised by the damage. It was able to almost one-shot all of them, but it makes sense considering the overleveling and the fact that for how much I have been complaining, Huntail still has a good base special attack stat. Unfortunately, this is where things stopped going my way. May is back, and this time she brings the hit in form of a Grovyle. It still only has Absorb, but even though it's a weak move, it's more than enough to put me 6 feet under multiple times. I could have leveled against wild Pokémons, but that takes forever, so instead I kept bashing my head against her team until I got a bit more lucky and just barely made it through her. After taking many hits from Absorb, I was left with only 2 HP, but fortunately her next Pokémon is one of the weakest in the game, so I could defeat it no problem. So next up is Watson, and I was very worried about him too, considering the type matchup, but somehow the fight against him was kinda easy. Yeah, when his Pokémons hit me with electric moves, they hurt a lot, I can't deny that, but it seems that he is more worried about buffing or paralyzing me, so that leaves me enough time to make my way through his team. I had a bit of a close call with Manectric after a shockwave, but without a crit I survived and defeated his ace too. After dealing with two very tough fights, I had some time to relax, improve my moveset and train a bit. We also met the Team Aqua and Magma in the cave, and after some more journeys ended up atop the volcano to stop Maxi. Here is where the more special moveset pays off. Like usual, he starts with Mightyena, which reduces my attack, but since I just spam Water Pulse, it does not matter, and his team is defeated without any major issues. Once we make our way to the next village, I can start the fight against the gym leader there. Unfortunately for her, Flannery only uses fire types, two of whom are part ground, so she does not like H2O at all. In the end, this fight was a Water Pulse spam too, until all of her Pokémon were defeated. After snatching one of the easier gyms, we have to backtrack quite a bit until we are face to face with our dad. This fight was considerably more challenging than the last, but the strategy did not really change. Water Pulse is still my best option unless it is resisted, so I spammed it here too. It is also a good move to use against Slacking, since it will likely use counter at least once, expecting us to be a physical attacker. By the way, if anybody knows the logic that the AI uses to decide when or if to use counter or mirror coat, let me know in the comments. That's something I am interested in learning. Anyway, it was a close match, but in the end we are victorious, and for our trouble we get the Surf HM, which is my favorite HM ever and is also a great move to teach to Huntail. I also picked up Ice Beam from the ship and taught it too. This time I remembered to record the match against the Team Aqua admin in the Weather Institute, but there is not much to say. Next is May, just before 4-3, and this time I have a counter move for her damn starter, so I am not worried. Then I misclicked, so had to eat some leaves for breakfast. But since she did not get a crit, I survived and could finish her off. In 4-3, we have to take on Winona and her flying types. This is the main reason why I got Ice Beam. Half of her team becomes a one-shot, so it should not be that bad. The most dangerous Pokémon are Pelipper and Skarmory, just because they might survive and screw me over with RNG moves. Fortunately, nothing like that happens, so we are free to walk away one badge richer. Much like with Milotic, there comes a point with this weird growth rate where you start leveling a lot without even noticing. This time I tried to keep closer attention and not level too much. The last fight with Mei is not that impressive. There is only one Pokemon who survives a direct hit, and that's Slugma because I used the wrong move. Pelipper is also a bit of a pain since it gets a double protect, but eventually we are able to defeat all of her Pokemons and move on with the main story. We stopped by Pokemon Silent Hill and picked up the magma emblem that we can use in front of an unassuming rock to enter the super secret Groudon cave. Here we battle through a lot of grunts until we reach Archie. After he wakes up the legendary, a fight ensues, and this time it is slightly harder than our previous encounter. You see, Huntail stats are pretty good, but his Achilles talon is speed. Crobat is able to go first and confuse me. It's not too bad, since I can soon snap out of it and get back to wiping his team. Then we have the small fight with the other Team Aqua admin in their base, but since he only has 2 Pokemons, this goes by very quickly. I was a bit surprised to see that Huntail does not get Shadow Ball, so I will have to get through Tate and Liza without it. It was not too hard. I still have Crunch that is super effective and Surf that is also mostly super effective. In the end, the fight against them was quite funny. I could deal a lot of damage to Claydol, but not quite enough to take it out, so from turn 2 onwards, they were healing it every turn. Meanwhile, the sidekicks were neglected and drowned from my water waves. Eventually there was only the ground type left, and yeah, one more surf did the job just fine, earning us the 7th badge of the game. Unfortunately, before we can go get the last one, the main story forces itself back into the video, with the double fight against the remains of Team Magma. For this one, we have to fight both the chief and an admin, but we are not alone in this endeavor. The ex-champion helps us out in a 2v2. Not going to lie, I was not paying attention to this match. I just kept pressing A on Surf while watching YouTube on my phone. What can I say? This fight is not very hard if you have a decent Pokemon, and with a spread special move there is not a whole lot I have to worry about. Sure, I could get very unlucky with confusion, but it's not like me paying attention would change the outcome. It's not quantum physics. Once we have spanked Team Magma one last time, Steven gives us the Dive HM and we can use it to reach the next story bit in the seafloor cavern, where Archie wants to wake up Kyogre. As usual, we have a literal fight over it, and while technically he is stronger than Maxi since he has a couple more levels and a water type, the outcome in the end is still the same. If the Pokemon Company really wanted Archie to use the orb, they could have made this a scripted loss, so it would have made a bit more sense, but it's a bit late for that, considering that the game has been out for 20 years. From here we go fetch Rayquaza, and as usual he stops the other 2 legendaries. It would have been nice to pick them up before the league, like in Ruby and Sapphire, but that would have made the last part of the game too easy. Next is the last gym fight. Juan is not too bad. His water types resist my surf, but in reality they still hurt a lot. In the end, a mix of that and some returns were enough to get the job done. This gives me a bit of hope for the Wallace fight, since their teams are kinda similar, but the champion has a lot more coverage and his Pokémons are very tanky. After a rough start, Huntail managed to get back on its flippers and at the moment has a pretty good time considering the 5 resets too. Once we have completed the gym trials, we can access the Victory Road. Here we are stopped by Wally, but today it's not his day, because for how much his team is varied, he has a major weakness to water plus ice. None of his Pokémons are capable of surviving a hit, except for Gardevoir, but he can only keep throwing potions on it until he runs out, and we can finally defeat the last obstacle before the league. Today I did not have that many preparations to do, so we can soon enter the last gauntlet of the game. Our first adversary is Sidney. His team is not too strong and relies heavily on RNG moves. Unfortunately for him, Stab, Surf or Ice Beam are enough to take care of most of his Pokémons in one hit, leaving him little time for any kind of strategy. I made a wrong move and used Return on Kronaast, forgetting about the Intimidate, so he survived easily, but since he only buffed up with Sword Dance, I could easily fix the mistake the next turn with Surf. Pheobe is second. By far the biggest threat in her team is the lead, because if her Dusclops manages to get a curse off, it's game over. Today I was just barely able to defeat it with one crunch. That must have been an extremely close dice roll. The rest of the team is not a big deal. The Banets are way less tanky, and Sableye and the second Dusclops, on the other hand, did not learn to swim. Next up is Glacia, and she was the fight I was most worried about out of the Elite Four. Her team has a lot of water types that can live Surf. There is always the cheap damage from Hail and the chance of a paralysis from Body Slam, or even worse, a freeze from one of the many Ice Beam users. I also got caught by surprise by the Celio using Attract. I did not remember she had that move. I don't get infatuated many times, so I can defeat it a few turns later, but that could have ended badly, especially if mixed with another status effect. I am also glad that she used a lot of potions on Glalie. Otherwise she would have used them on Walrein, and that would have been much worse for me. As you can see, my damage output against the Walrus is suboptimal, and with my HP getting lower each turn, it was a sort of close fight in the end. At least I can breathe a little bit now, because the next fight should be easier. Drake only uses dragon types, and most of them are doubly weak to ice, so Ice Beam should carry me through this one. The only Pokemon that can stand in my way is a Kingdra, since all I have is a neutral at best. Unfortunately, it uses Smoke Screen on me, which is not good. But I forgot that Huntail, as a deep sea fish, is used to swimming in the dark, so this debuff means nothing to it, and without missing a beat proceeds to exterminate the rest of Drake's team. Last but not least, we have the champion fight. This one could go either way. I don't have any particular strategy to take it down, so I just have to hope for the best. Wailord is able to use Rain Dance. This is usually very bad because it means that Ludicolo is fast now and has more chances to Leech Seed. Luckily for me, it turns out that I also have Swift Swim and completely forgot about it. Ultimately, Ludicolo only deals damage instead of using the seeds, so that's a great start to the match. Tentacruel poisons me, but I have a berry for that. But then my Lotic comes out. Initially I used Crunch for the defense drops, but I did not get them, so I switched back to Return, and since Wallace did not use any potions, I removed my Lotic a lot easier than I expected. Wishcash is another casualty of Surf. In 2 hits though, I was expecting him to go down in only 1. And lastly, Gyarados, even though it has good special defense and is neutral to it, went down in 2 Ice Beams. Maybe not the most glamorous of runs, but Huntail finished the game with a respectable time and just 5 resets. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell, and maybe share the video. If you have any video ideas, feedback, or want to chat, leave something down in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Bye!